Well, good morning. As Joel mentioned in his prayer, and many of us do, that we can learn from the things we study. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from this material, isn't there? Even though some will say the Old Testament, there's still many things that we can learn and apply to our lives from it. We left off as David spares Saul's life. We're just going to pick back up there since we just read the first few verses there. So we'll pick back up in 1 Samuel 24, beginning in verse 1. Now it happened when Saul had returned from following the Philistines that it was told him, saying, "Take note, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi." Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. And as we've already mentioned, we thought that it could have potentially, based on last week, that Saul could have been, thinking a little more clearly possibly. What do we see again? What's number one on his mind at this point? Kill David. Going after David again. And how many times has he been unsuccessful at that? I've lost count off the top of my head, but several times he has attempted to kill David. And of course, God is with David, and he'll continue to be unsuccessful. Verse 3. So he came to the sheepfolds by the road where there was a cave, and Saul went in to attend his needs. David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. You can imagine, I guess this was very rough, a rough area. Just think if you've ever hiked in the mountains, it was probably more rough than that for anywhere that we're used to. Verse 4, and the men of David said to him, "This is the day of which the Lord said to you, Behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, that you may do to him as it seems good to you." And David arose and secretly cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Now it happened afterward that David's heart troubled him because he had cut off Saul's robe. And he said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord." So David restrained his servants with these words and did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. Again, this shows what kind of man David was, doesn't it? So we learn later, a man after God's own heart. And even though the Lord was no longer with Saul, he was still on the physical throne, wasn't he? David recognized that and he had respect for that position, didn't he? Is there anything we can learn from that today? Even though there could be ungodly men in power, still need to have respect for the position, don't we? Doesn't mean we have to agree with everything they do, but we do need to respect the position. Any comments? Donald?
Perfect opportunity, but he looks deeper, and that's really something we should do too. We should look deeper and not just go off of what the world thinks is what does God think.
And we'll find out here soon that David had complete faith that God was in control of that situation, didn't we? And we'll see that shortly. All right, picking up in verse 8. David also arose afterward, went out of the cave and called out to Saul, saying, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed down. And David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of men who say, 'Indeed, David seeks you harm'? Look, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you. But my eyes spared you, and I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For in that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, and I have not sinned against you, yet you hunt my life to take it. Let the Lord judge between you and me, and let the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you. As the proverb of the ancient says, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom was the king of Israel come out? Whom did you pursue? A dead dog, a flea? Therefore let the Lord be judge, and judge between you and me, and see and plead my case, and deliver me out of your hand. As we just read, this is proof that David was never going to kill Saul, as David mentioned on several occasions there. He had no intention of doing so, even when he had multiple attempts to do that successfully. All right, verse 16. So it was when David had finished speaking these words to Saul that Saul said, Is this your voice, my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. Then he said to David, You are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil. And you have shown this day how you have dealt well with me, for when the Lord delivered me into your hand, you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him get away safely? Therefore may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And now I know indeed that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Therefore swear now to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's house. So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. Of course, you think from this, it finally seems that Saul thought differently, didn't he? At least for a short period of time. We know that because what could he have done immediately at that point, once David presented himself to him? Saul could have attacked him then, couldn't he, with all the men that were with him, but he chose not to. So it seems that he did get through to him, at least for this short period of time. Life and death situations tend to change people's minds, don't they? He realized he could have been killed at that moment when David was holding up his robe, didn't he? And another important thing, Saul finally acknowledges that he believes David will be king over Israel. But as we'll get to soon again, Saul's heart really hasn't changed, has it? Any comments before we move on? Wes?
No, it's so sad. We've thought about this through the years, about how that Saul's a little bit like a broken appliance, you know. I mean, if you shake it just right, it comes back on, but you know it's not. And that's about where, you know, we can be sometimes. You know, we have enough conscience to feel it once in a while, but we don't have enough will to commit ourselves to God. And it's just so sad to see this in Saul, and it's so much of a warning for us that we can fall into that same trap.
Almost like a feel-good type thing, isn't it? Feel good one period, yeah.
Yes, it's shocked into some, some bit of conscience here, but he gets over it. And David knows he is. He doesn't say, "Let me go home with you, Saul." King Saul. He says, "Yeah." But he realizes that the danger's not past. It's certainly not, and the story doesn't end the way we wish it did.
Yep. Anybody else? And we read it already, but you can mark down, I believe, Psalm 57, if you're taking notes there to go along with this. All right, moving on. Now come to David and Nabal. That's in 1 Samuel 25. Beginning in verse 1. And Samuel died, and the Israelites gathered together and lamented for him and buried him at his home in Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. Of course, now we see the death of a righteous man, don't we? And how did Israel feel about Samuel? What do? They mourned for him. Shows you what kind of man Samuel was. And most people mourn for a wicked ruler, wicked king. No. Verse 2. Now there was a man in Moab whose business was in Carmel, and the man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. The name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding and beautiful appearance, but the man was harsh and evil in his doings. He was of the house of Caleb. So here we've got two people joined in marriage who are the complete opposites, don't we? We find that out from the beginning, and we'll find out more as we get into this. Seems Abigail was a woman of integrity, but Nabal, of course, was not. He was harsh and evil in all his doings, as we just read. Verse 4. When David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel, go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus you shall say to him who lives in prosperity, Peace be to you, peace to your house, and peace to all you have. Now I've heard that you have shearers. Your shepherds were with us, and we did not hurt them, nor was there anything missing from them all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and to your son David." So when David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal according to all these words in the name of David, and waited. Then Nabal answered David's servants and said, "Who is David, and who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away, each one from his master." How many people are like Nabal today? I think we've all can think of some. They have so much, they don't know what to do with it, do they? And this would have been a good deed that he could have partaken in, but he chose another route, didn't he? Verse 11. "Shall I then take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers, and give it to men who I do not know where they are from?" So David's young men turned on their heels and went back, and they came and told him all these words. Then David said to his men, "Every man gird on his sword." So every man girded on his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And about 400 men went with David, and 200 stayed with the supplies. And Wes mentioned it on Wednesday. We see so much restraint from David in reference to Saul, and then all of a sudden he's done wrong here, and what does he do? Get your swords, let's take him out.
This is one of those moments that, we look back and say, yeah, he was human.
Yep.
He was at a weak moment.
Yep. Donald?
And David's not asking really for charity. His men have been protecting these shepherds and stuff. And with all this stuff going on in the land, with the Amalekites and the Philistines, if you got stuff out there, and you had sheep and all kinds of things, you would think, there would be people trying to take it from you. And so they've done him a great service in protecting his, so you would think that he would have some kind of gratitude, on some level, to acknowledge that. It's not like we come in and say, "We didn't do anything for you, but we want some food," like we're beggars or something. No, in a sense, we earned it,
Yep. Well, we read at the start of the chapter. Nabal was harsh, evil in all his doings.
So we look at this, and this is one of those times where they said he's having a feast, and nowadays if you get outside and barbecue, you have so much food left over. And this is one of those times that he was having a feast, so he had plenty. It says he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, so he would have had more than enough to send David and his men.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? All right, verse 14. Now one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt. nor did we miss anything as long as we accompanied them when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us by night and day, all the time we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now, therefore, know and consider what you will do. For harm is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him. Nobody really has anything good to say about Nabal, do they? It's almost like you can't find anything good to say about him. As we already mentioned, I'm sure we've met or known with someone like that in our lifetime. We don't want to be that type of person, do we? Verse 18, Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. That shows you they had enough, didn't they? I mean, she's prepared it, getting it ready. And she said to her servants, Go on before me. See, I am coming after you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal. I think we know what he would have done if she would have told him. Answer would have been no. So it was, as she rode on the donkey, that she went down under cover of the hill, and there were David and his men coming down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, Surely in vain I have protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belongs to him, and he has repaid me evil for good. May God do so and more also to the enemies of David, if I leave one male of all who belong to him by morning light. Now when Abigail saw David, she dismounted quickly from the donkey, fell on her face before David, and bowed down to the ground. So she fell at his feet and said, On me, my lord, on me let this iniquity be, and please let your maidservant speak in your ears, and hear the words of your maidservant. Please let not my lord regard this scoundrel Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your maidservant, did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent. Imagine what Abigail went through on a daily basis. What does she even refer to her husband as? A scoundrel. So you can imagine what she endured day in and day out. But what's interesting about this, what did she still do? Brother Perry?
Your comment there, I think Nabal means fool, I think.
Yep, it does. It's one of my footnotes. That's what it has there, yep. But what did she still do? She interceded on his behalf, didn't she? Even when there could have been something tugging at you saying this could be the end of him. Just let David do what he'll do, but she still interceded for him. And she seems to be an amazing woman, doesn't she? Wes, did you have something?
No, well, she's concerned about more than just Nabal, isn't she? She's
Yep.
concerned about the whole household, and there are a lot more innocent people involved in this. But you're right. You know, she does the right thing, trying to clean up his mess, which is probably not the first time that's happened, but this maybe is the worst time, you know, as she's facing, and the whole household is facing the wrath of David. So.
And she throws it out there, let this be on me, even when she didn't have anything to do with it at the start. That shows her humility there, I believe, too. Anybody else before we move on? Verse 26. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, since the Lord has held you back from coming to bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now then let your enemies and those who seek harm for my Lord be as Nabal. And now this present which your maidservant has brought to my Lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the trespass of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make for my Lord an enduring house, because my Lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil is not found in you throughout your days. Yet a man has risen to pursue you and seek your life, but the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God, and the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the pocket of a sling. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord has done for my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you ruler over Israel, that this will be no grief to you, nor offense of heart to my Lord, either that you have shed blood without cause, or that my Lord has avenged himself. But when the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, then remember your maidservant. Then David said to Abigail, Blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. And blessed is your advice, and blessed are you, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed, and from avenging myself with my own hand. For indeed, as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has kept me back from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, surely by morning light no males would have been left to Nabal. So David received from her hand what she had brought him, and said to her, Go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your voice and respected your person. Now Abigail went to Nabal, and there he was holding a feast in his house like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. Therefore she told him nothing, little or much, until morning light. So we still see that
Be a good indicator that Nabal had to have known who David was during this whole process. If she had this much information,
Yeah.
she knew this much detail concerning David, down to the slang, he would have to have knowledge of who David is, and that perhaps what he said was out of sarcasm and rude and crudeness.
He didn't have respect for David.
Not knowing who is this David.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's a point that we all, I mean, sometimes I don't think we see how common that is. We've already seen it with Saul. Saul knows who David is, where this, what God has said about David. And he's sort of kicking against the pricks, so to speak, and that's sort of what Nabal's doing. And sometime in our life, I think, well, we probably all do that. But David does it later. With Uriah and Bathsheba. He does some things there he knows he shouldn't be doing.
Yep.
Tries to cover it up the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very common thing. We think, well, how can they be so blind? And maybe that's what we need to ask ourselves a lot of times. How can we be so blind to God's will?
Yep. Yes.
Maybe to make this point, but it's always struck me, Abigail, as an instrument of providence, he mentions that twice. He thinks this is a God-given blessing to prevent him from committing this sin. David would have answered Nabal's wickedness with his own, taking things into his own hands. And the word there in verse 33 of the old translation reads, Blessed be thy advice. We made the point before that that's the same word in the Hebrew that's used over in Proverbs 11. I think it's 22 when he says there's a jewel of gold in a pig's snout, so is a fair woman without discretion. That's the same word. You wonder what that means. It means Abigail. It's just a wise woman who, in a wise way, in this case, will point you in the right direction, not lead you in the wrong direction.
Yep.
And it's just a marvelous moment, for her, I think. And David recognizes it as a gift from God.
And David still had an open mind and a willingness to listen to, didn't he? Complete opposite of Saul. We see that, of course, David heeded her words. Anybody else?
Back up in verse 3, Nabal was of the house of Caleb. Is that the same Caleb that with Joshua when he went out and spied the land?
I'm not 100% sure, but anybody else have anything on that? But when I read that, that's what came to my mind, but I don't know 100% if that's, I'm not sure.
Be the most famous Caleb we know.
Yeah.
I have Calebite. So that would maybe be another case of how, just because you're kin to somebody righteous doesn't make you righteous.
Yep.
There were a lot of rascals in the lineage of the Lord, when you think about it. Folks who did some awful things that didn't reflect on their famous descendant, I guess we could say.
Yep. All right, verse 37. So it was in the morning when the wine had gone from Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became like a stone. Then it happened after about 10 days that the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. What did Nabal put his trust in? Yep. How many warnings do we have about that in Scripture? I don't even know many. I don't even know off the top of my head how many. It's also an example of not knowing when our time will come, isn't it? What was Nabal just doing previously the night before? Drinking, getting drunk, having a big party, not a care in the world. And something we can think about is, how do we need to spend our time? Nabal wasn't spending his time wisely, was he? Verse 39. So when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Blessed be the Lord, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept his servant from evil. For the Lord has returned the wickedness of Nabal on his own head." And David sent and proposed to Abigail to take her as his wife. When the servants of David had come to Abigail at Carmel, they spoke to her, saying, "David sent us to you to ask you to become his wife." And she arose, bowed her face to the earth, and said, "Here is your maidservant, a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord." So Abigail rose in haste and rode on a donkey, attended by 5 of her maidens, and she followed the messengers of David and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and so both of them were his wives. But Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Palti, the son of Laish, who was from Galim. So David didn't want to waste any time. He knew what kind of woman that Abigail was, didn't he? So he took her as his wife once Nabal passed. And what is interesting there, what did Saul do with Michal? Did he have a right to do this? No, he didn't, did he? But again, we know what type of person Saul was at this time. Anybody else?
I think that was his way, another way of getting back at David, kind of like treating David like he doesn't even exist anymore.
When we see what we thought there was some sense when he cut off the corner of his robe, but now he's doing this again. It's almost like it's just starting all back over again.
Michael, she loved David.
Yep. She even helped him escape once, didn't she? All right. David spares Saul's life again. In 1 Samuel 26. Now the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is David not hiding in the hill of Hachilah, opposite Jeshimon?" And Saul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul encamped in the hill of Hachilah, which is opposite Jeshimon by the road. But David stayed in the wilderness, and he saw that Saul came after him into the wilderness. David therefore sent out spies and understood that Saul had indeed come. As we just mentioned, we don't have a record that David did anything to even stir up Saul again here, do we? It's almost like Saul's at peace, so to speak, not doing anything, and then he just starts meditating on David again. Anger gets stirred up. And again, he sends 3,000 men, or 3,000 men go with him, and that's what number one priority again, kill David. Verse 5. So David arose and came to the place where Saul had encamped. And David saw the place where Saul lay, and Abner the son of Ner, the commander of his army. Now Saul lay within the camp, and the people encamped all around him. Then David answered and said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, saying, Who will go down with me to Saul in the camp? And Abishai said, I will go down with you. So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and there Saul lay sleeping within the camp, with his spear stuck in the ground by his head. There's Saul's spear again, close by him. And Abner and the people lay all around him. Then Abishai said to David, God has delivered your enemy into your hand this day. Now therefore, please, let me strike him at once with the spear, right to the earth, and I will not have to strike him a second time. But David said to Abishai, Do not destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said furthermore, As the Lord lives, the Lord shall strike him, as his day shall come to die, or he shall go out to battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed, but please take now the spear and the jug of water that are by his head, and let us go. So David took the spear and the jug of water by Saul's head, and they got away, and no man saw or knew it or awoke, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord had fallen on them. David's men are not like him, are they? You know, surprising that he even says there, please let me do this. I don't know, they could be tired of running, but they could have easily done this. They could have taken it into their own hands, but it seems they had a lot of respect for David too, didn't they? Unlike Saul. Any comments there, O'Donnell?
Well, you know, when you look at the situation, and they, you know, these men that are with David, you know, they fear Saul too, and they realize he's coming after them. And they've already had these situations where, you know, Saul, okay, he's not coming, but then they kind of know he is really coming. And so, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, they're, you know, for us to get the sense of, you know, they're living in fear, you know, that he would, you know, given the right circumstances, we could be killed. But the thing with Saul, it's kind of like you said, you know, at one moment he's one way and then another, and it's like his mind keeps going back to think, I have one problem. If I take care of this one with David, if I take care of this one problem, everything's going to be great. You know, I mean, I don't know how he thought things were going to get good. If, you know, God's against you, it doesn't matter what you do. But in his mind, he somehow changed the, you know, made it seem like if I get rid of this one problem. And, you know, as has been mentioned before, it's interesting how we can look at things and think we have it all figured out. If I take care of this one thing, you know, everything's going to be great. If I'm honest, I will realize if it's not, I'm not in accordance with God's will, it is never going to get better.
Yep. Mike?
I figure he's just wrapped up in his anger, his jealousy or upset about his son's not being able to take the throne, and it's going to be David instead. And so he's, you know, he's struggling with that kind of an anger and animosity towards God's decision.
Yep.
Because of his choices. You know, he knows that's the case. So he's battling that. I'm sure just that anger. And again, he brought it on himself.
Yep.
But rather than understanding the results and the consequences based on what he's done, he's lashing out.
Yep. Anybody else? All right, verse 13. Oh, and again, as already mentioned, we know this. Who is in control and who is still in control of all these events? What does it say that God did there? Put a deep sleep on him, didn't he? So God is still in control. David knows that as well. Verse 13. Now David went over to the other side and stood on top of the hill far off, a great distance being between them. And David called out to the people, and to Abner, the son of Ner, saying, Do you not answer, Abner? Then Abner answered and said, Who are you, calling out to the king? So David said to Abner, Are you not a man? And who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not guarded your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy your lord the king. This thing that you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you deserve to die, because you have not guarded your master, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is, and the jug of water that was by his head. What did David do here to Abner?
He pointed out that he was supposed to be watching over the king, and he had somebody walk right up to him, and while he was asleep, and take his jug and his spear right up under him.
That is an embarrassment, isn't he? David's calling out Abner personally here. And what did David say? You deserve what? You deserve to die. You didn't protect your master. Then Saul knew David's voice and said, Is that your voice, my son David? David said, It is my voice, my lord, O king. And he said, Why does my lord thus pursue his servant? For what have I done, or what evil is in my hand? Now therefore, please, let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If the Lord has stirred you up against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, may they be cursed before the Lord, for they have driven me out this day from sharing in the inheritance of the Lord, saying, Go serve other gods. So now, do not let my blood fall on the earth before the face of the Lord. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains. Then Saul said, I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will harm you no more, because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Indeed, I have played the fool and erred exceedingly. And David answered and said, Here is the king's spear. Let one of the young men come over and get it. May the Lord repay every man for his righteousness and his faithfulness. For the Lord delivered you into my hand today, but I would not stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. And indeed, as your life was valued much this day in my eyes, so let my life be valued much in the eyes of the Lord, and let him deliver me out of all tribulation. Then Saul said to David, May you be blessed, my son David. You shall both do great things and also still prevail. So David went on his way, and Saul returned to his place. Does David trust Saul here even after he says he has sinned? No. Who did he say, come get the spear? Come send one of your young guys to come and get the spear. You wouldn't know what Saul would have on his mind at that time. The spear was always beside him. If he were to give it to him, chances are he might have tried to spear him just like he'd done multiple times in the past. But it's also the second time that it seemed that Saul, as we mentioned, he flip-flops, but it seems to have gotten through to him somewhat, but not really. Maybe for a moment. Anything before we move on? We've got about 3 minutes. We'll get into 1 Samuel 27. 1 Samuel 27, beginning in verse 1. Oh, Wes.
Just a quick note here, we've been looking at these Psalms. We mentioned Psalm 63 yet? I don't remember.
I had that on my notes and forgot to mention it.
Yeah, the wilderness of Judea. When David was there. And it was sometime in this time that these great words, O God, thou art my God, early will I seek thee, my soul thirsteth for thee. My flesh longs for thee in a dry and thirsty land where no water is, to see thy power, thy glory, so as I have seen thee in the sanctuary. Because of thy loving kindness is better than life. My lips will praise thee. verse 7, in the shadow of thy wings will I rejoice. It is striking, isn't it? Again, just underlining the story, all the references to God's providence. You know, in the shadow of thy wings, it's a great sort of summary of it all. You know, the Lord sent Abigail, and the Lord caused a deep sleep, and the Lord gave David these opportunities. And I think it's a great thing to realize we don't understand all that happens or why, but we have that sense that we live in the shadow of His wing. It's a very empowering thing. If we do what's right, you know, we know that it will be well. And that's a great part of the story.
Yep. All my sticky notes I have down with little notes. It was covering one up. So if you're taking notes, Psalm 63. Put that down for there. We've only got a minute. I don't want to get into David among the Philistines. Brother Donald's got a comment, and we'll close after that.
You know, you got to think, you know, here's Saul chasing David. The kingdom's got to be falling apart. You know, he's not doing his duty, if you will. They wanted the king to handle stuff. He's out in the wilderness somewhere. And then people are now finding out that, hey, David and Saul are, going against one another, or King Saul going after David. And they had to, he's like a local hero, if you will, going up against Goliath and all this kind of stuff. So people have to be totally confused with what is happening here. It's kind of like, it just makes you wonder, is it just a state of confusion that's going on? People are trying to figure out which way is up, because nothing makes sense right now.
Well, it seems like the people, and even Abigail, she didn't believe David had done anything wrong, did she? She said he went out to fight the Lord's battles. So you can tell where people, even his own men, could possibly just be scared to say anything because he's actually sitting on the throne at that time, like we discussed a while back. But our time's to a close. Thank you all for your comments. We'll pick up there on Wednesday. David.